Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to this this workshop. I think it's really more a symposium than a workshop, perhaps. Um, and this is really, I think, a very important discussion. And I think it's wonderful that NAUA is having this discussion. So the title of the workshop is Liberal Religious Faith, Diversity, and Unity. And this, I think, is a great challenge. What I would like to do first is to introduce each one of our panelists and then make a few introductory remarks with regard to the topic, and then we will turn it over really to the panelists to have them share their wisdom and their opinions and their thoughts on this very important topic. So I'm going to share my screen if I can. There it is. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay. And it should be on. Okay. Oh, sorry. I just unshared my screen.
It's still sharing.
Yeah,
Is it
we can
still
see it.
sharing? I couldn't see it. The uh, there's this little okay, what I'm going to try. Good, that's great. Okay, so this is the topic, liberal religious faith, unity and diversity. And can I? And our panelists are John Eckroat from France, the Reverend Dr. Todd Eckloff, as you all know, from Spokane, Reverend Jerry Kerr and Reverend Lynn Kerr from the UU congregation at Flint, Michigan, and Professor George Williams, who is the president of the International Association for Religious Freedom and also the founder of the Free Religion Institute, with which both organizations we have a wonderful, productive relationship with as of our membership in June. And I'm your moderator, Stephen Palmer. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees and also the chairperson of the International Alliance Committee. I will introduce each one of our panelists briefly. John Eckroat is a lifelong Unitarian, and he founded two Unitarian associations in Europe, one in France, one in Switzerland. He is an very active member of the European Unitarian Universalist uh, Association, EUU. He has been a member of NAUA since the very beginning. Uh, and he is also a founding member of our NAUA International Alliance Committee. John professionally was a professor, a lycée professor of English and history for 20 years, and prior to that worked with the International Labor Office of UN. He is a lawyer by background and is now retired and lives with his wife Cornelie in France. And John and I have become, I think, very good friends. Another friend, the Reverend Todd Eckloff, whom I think everybody knows, but perhaps not fully familiar with his background. Todd is, of course, minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane since 2011. He was formerly minister of Clifton Unitarian Church in Louisville, Kentucky, for about 12 years prior to coming to Spokane. Formerly, he was an ordained Baptist minister until 1988. He has an undergraduate degree in philosophy and communications, and his doctorate of ministry comes from Meade Lombard Theological School in Chicago. He is also a certified member of the American Philosophical Practitioners Association. And of course, as everyone knows, he is the founder of NAUA and the current president of the NAUA Board of Trustees. Reverend Jerry Kerr is a co-minister with his wife Lynn of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Flint, Michigan, which is an NAUA affiliated congregation. Um, he is a graduate of Duke University Divinity School and also attended Starr King School of the Ministry. Um, I have something in common with Jerry. We both worked in AIDS, and he worked in the area of HIV/AIDS care and prevention of AIDS for 19 years in Toledo, Ohio, and in Boston, Massachusetts. And he is the founder of the Toledo-based Northwest Ohio Syringe Services program. So they're, uh, I'm sure, great work in reaching out into the community. Uh, Thank you, Jerry. And and his wife Lynn, as I mentioned, Jerry and Lynn are co-ministers of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Flint, Michigan. Lynn has been a UU minister for 29 years. She served as a minister of the UU Church in Bowling Green, Ohio, for 8 years, and the church in Toledo also for 8 years. Lynn has served as the director of donor relations as well as as a congregational consultant for the Unitarian Universalist Association. And last but not least is my good friend George Williams. George is the president of the um, International Association for Religious Freedom that I referred to earlier, and is the founder of the Free Religion Institute of the IARF. George is an emeritus professor of religious studies from California State University, Chico. Um, he he has made major scholarly contributions, specializing in Asian religion and the Hindu Renaissance and religions that that liberate. I would also comment for those of you who aren't familiar, he wrote the biography of Shinichiro Imaoka, known as the Cosmic Sage, the Japanese Unitarian scholar, and I think someone who has been very inspirational and the inspiration of the Free Religion Institute. Uh, George holds honorary doctorates from the Starr King School for the Ministry and also the United Protestant Theological School in Cluj, Romania, which is the theological seminary that trains our fellow Unitarians in Transylvania. He is a kapuna, an elder of the indigenous Hawaiian faith, Kananui Kea, and has actually written some books with leaders of that faith explaining it. And George serves as an advisor to our NAUA International Alliance Committee and has made really great contributions. And as I have mentioned before, it is through George and our relationship with him that we are able to offer a variety of courses on different religions, including, for example, Buddhism, which has been going on for a while. So with that, I would conclude my slideshow. And I'd just like to make a few introductory remarks before turning it over to our panelists. And that is the challenge of having unity in the face of diversity is a significant one. Most traditional religions don't have that problem because there is no diversity. There's a creed, you follow the creed, it's a take it or leave it thing. You know, you either uh, accept all of it or not. The strength of Unitarianism and liberal religion is that we're open. It presents a challenge, and therefore people are going to have different beliefs and uh, found their faith on some different principles. There may be, and I believe there is a core in Unitarian Universalism or Unitarianism, and but people add different things to it that make it their own religion. Now, this is not a new issue with regard to Unitarians, and I have a, um, a report by the Commission on Appraisal of the Unitarian Universalist Association of 2005. I'll show it to you. I don't know if you can see it. Well, maybe you can't. There it is. And it was the culmination of a 5-year study in which the commission tried to, quote, engage our theological diversity. They had a number of interesting comments and suggestions after their 5 years of work. But the key message was this is the beginning, this should be the beginning of a discussion of our diversity and how can deal with preserving diversity and maintaining unity. As far as I can see, that was not the beginning of the discussion, but the end of the discussion. There was no attempt to deal with diversity of thought. And the Unitarian Universalist Association, as you know, has has gone down the path of most traditional religions. So I think it is up to us this morning to start to reopen that discussion. How do we deal with the challenges and the potential great rewards of having diversity within one's religion and then or one's faith and then maintaining unity. So with those brief remarks, I will open the floor to our panelists to share their ideas and their wisdom with us. And I would just ask who would like to be first?
Stephen, I don't necessarily want to be first, but I did want to ask how much time is allotted. I know we've
Oh,
got
yes.
about 45 minutes. I think this ends at 11, unless we
No,
run over. But how much time were you wanting each of us to speak?
we actually have 2 hours
Oh,
for
okay,
this.
okay.
We have 2 hours for this, and I sent out an email last night suggesting that we try to keep our initial comments down to about 10 minutes or so, and then we will open the floor for discussion. So I think probably most of you got that. So about 10 minutes, um, and then we'll move on. So who's willing to go first? Is John? Okay. The floor is yours, John. Unmute. John, unmute.
I would rather go first than last because the persons who are on this panel, uh, I'm a little bit uh, meek to meet the standards that that we have on this panel. It's a little bit overwhelming, so I'd rather go first, and it's easy to follow me. If I had to follow the others, it would be really very difficult. I've timed what I want to say. I've written 2 short pages. And I had a lot of trouble deciding what I was going to say today. And so there was a lot of thought, preliminary thought into what was essential. And I understand that the theme is important. So I looked at myself and I looked at who we are and I looked at what the challenges are. And I decided that the best thing I could do was to speak to our issue from an international perspective, because I'm international. I'm an international Unitarian and have been for 60 years, and that's what I think contribute best. So this is from an international perspective. And these are my opinions, and of course, they're not universal truths as such. I think the main question that I have, the main issue that I have, and that comes out from the various discussions that I've heard here at the summit and during the years, is the following: Can Unitarian Universalism be considered a worldwide faith? Is it a worldwide faith? Is it on the world map of major faiths so that persons around the world can claim that faith as their own? That's the issues that I thought was most important to raise. My answer to that issue, the answer to that question is yes. And in the few minutes I have, I will try to give the main reasons why I think it is, despite the wide diversity in our theologies around the world and in the ways we come together locally. I will try to do so by sharing my own personal experience in Europe, and then the major developments in Europe and around the world. This essentially spans 50 years, a half a century, from 1970 to 220, and I'll try to do that in about 9 minutes. My personal experience in France begins in 1970, when I immigrated to France after the Peace Corps. The first 10 years were very difficult. I had met my wife in Togo, we married, and I was in the Peace Corps, and we decided to immigrate to France. This was a very difficult decision, of course, involving culture, profession, and especially my Unitarian faith. I was a Unitarian. When somebody asked me in Europe, in France especially, when we began living in France, what my religion was, guess what I said? I would naively say, I am a Unitarian. Je suis Unitarien. And what did I get in response? I received blank stares, not understanding. And of course, the question, what is that? I quickly found out that there were no French Unitarians in France in 1970. Consequence, I could no longer claim my faith, my Unitarian faith in France. I could not affirm my spiritual identity. There is a sentiment of loss and emptiness when you realize that you don't exist any longer in your faith. When your faith is not recognized, this is existentially almost unbearable. Before coming to France, I knew who I was, in large part because of my Unitarian faith. It gave me my identity. I discovered how difficult it was to claim your faith, to be able to say to yourself, to be able to be yourself, when that faith is not recognized institutionally. From that point on, I'm going to skip to 1980. And while I was in France in 1980 in Europe, I discovered the CLF and I joined the CLF. I could again connect with my Unitarian faith and my Unitarian identity, even though it was still based in the US, which I had left. In 1982, a lot of things happened. It was a big year for Unitarianism in Europe. In 1982, the minister of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, Dr. George Marshall, helped to organize the European Unitarian Universalists, thus bringing Unitarian Universalists from around Europe together There were many Americans in that association, but not only. I went to the retreats, 2 retreats a year, with my wife and children. There, with the children, we met children from other families, and my children were able to experience the reality of our Unitarian faith and the basic principles of our faith. They know today who they are in large part because that spiritual community experience was character forming, real, and legitimate. I am convinced that if there had been no EUU in Europe when my children were growing up, my family would have evolved quite differently. They were able to develop their identity comfortably in tolerance, freedom, and considerable coherence because of the presence of the Unitarian, because of the presence of the European Unitarian Universalists. A second thing happened in 1982. Dr. Marshall also helped me to connect with the IARF, the International Association of Religious Freedom, in 1982. And in that year, in Montpellier, in France, the IARF held a major meeting. And at that meeting, 12 of the participants formed the Association Unitarienne Française, the Unitarian Association in France. Unitarianism now existed in France thanks to the IARF. One of our main problems immediately was that we had no models internationally for what we were trying to do, which resulted in the emergence of 3 factions that fractured our initiative in the following years. The factions mutually excluded each other from the association, which fell apart. I think you will recognize the 3 factions: Christian, deist, and humanist. 8 years later, in 1990, again, the IARF held its conference in Hamburg. There, I met religious liberals from around the world. It was a heady experience in realizing that religious liberals had been coming together for more than 100 years and doing that successfully. A major event occurred at that conference. Unitarians from around the world gathered together in one room. At this meeting, Reverend David Usher pleaded for the formation of an international Unitarian association. He believed the time was ripe. During his presentation, standing shoulder to shoulder, we could feel the electricity in the air. We were all conscious of the importance of what was happening and what we were about to set in motion. The result, the meeting mandated David Usher to go ahead with the initiative, which he did successfully. The beginning of unity out of diversity. In March 1995, 5 years later, at Essex, Massachusetts, the Unitarians from around the world met, and they established the International Council of Unitarians. They gave it a constitution, a budget, and a staff. The major challenge they had to meet, I think you will recognize that, the major challenge they had to meet was to define our worldwide UU faith. A faith that could give unity to the diverse UU communities around the world. After lengthy discussions that took several days and an all-night discussion, they finally did it. they unanimously adopted a common, universal declaration of our UU faith, a declaration of unity that included our diversity. In the following 25 years, the ICUU met regularly, held seminars, reached out to UUs, and put our faith on the world map. I myself attended many of their meetings, where I always experienced the feeling of being Unitarian with others. There was an inherent common spiritual energy present. We could each say, I am Unitarian, and claim our Unitarian faith. And we could do this whether we were from France, England, Germany, Transylvania, Khasi Hills, the US, Kenya, South Africa, Australia, or from any other country around the world. Here is I'm going to read the Universal Declaration of the Worldwide UU Faith, which has been accepted by almost all UUs around the world. What I think might be interesting is when I read it, you try to note one or two key statements that you think are the most important for the discussion later on. The declaration reads as follows. We, the member groups, this is our worldwide faith. We, the member groups of the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists, affirming our belief in religious community based on 1, liberty of conscience and individual thought in matters of faith. 2, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. 3, justice and compassion in human relations. 4, responsible stewardship in human relations. 5, and our commitment to democratic principles. It goes on to affirm that we declare our purposes to be, number 1, to serve, and what do you think they put? To serve the infinite spirit of life, the infinite spirit of life, and the human community by strengthening the worldwide Unitarian and Universalist faith. 2, second, to affirm the variety and richness of our living traditions. 3, to facilitate mutual support among member organizations. 4th, to promote our ideals and principles around the world. And 5th, and not least, to provide models of liberal religious response to the human condition which upholds our common values. And by making that declaration, they put the core of our Unitarian Universalist faith into active existence around the world. Voilà. I wanted to share that with you because I think our faith does exist.
John, thank you very much for that detailed exposition of the history of Unitarian Universalism in Europe and the lessons learned from that and the aspirations of international Unitarian and Unitarian Universalism. I wanted to say that we won't have questions right after each speaker because I want each speaker to have the opportunity to fully express their ideas. And but so the audience should please take notes, and then we will have an extensive question and answer session. So John, thank you very much. Who is willing to go next? The Kerrs, perhaps? Wonderful. Would you unmute yourself, Jerry and Lynn? Okay. There you go. Good. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
You.
So again, I'm Reverend Lynn Kerr from Flint, Michigan. And I'm retiring from ministry in May, my husband and I. And I don't think I would have ever guessed that I'd be speaking at a UU conference that was not sanctioned by the body that approved my ordination 29 years ago. It's a surprise to me. That's a body and a denomination that seems to me to have grown somewhat intolerant of different opinions over the years, most recently. And when things like that happen, I find it's good to look at your history and find what you're really made of. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Earl Morse Wilbur's Definitive History of Unitarianism, which was written in 1945. And in that, he defined our faith as characterized by three principles: freedom, reason, and tolerance. And he said that they unified our Unitarian tradition. And all three of those are still essential values to us, but Wilbur especially saw the importance and the influence of tolerance in our tradition, I think. And in fact, he wrote generous tolerance of differing religious views and usages rather than insistence upon uniformity in doctrine, worship, or polity is our unifying principle. So let me stress, generous tolerance, not uniformity, is what unifies religious liberals. Yet this is where I believe we must grow beyond tolerance. I think pure, somewhat grudging religious tolerance is not very hard. It means putting up with other religions. And I'm sure many of you know the Unitarian king Sigismund in the 16th century Transylvania created one of the first official attempts at it. And there were a lot of religious people being persecuted in Europe, and that king issued the Edict of Religious Tolerance, or also called the Edict of Torda, in 1568. And it allowed citizens to practice their own religion, and it also granted the congregations the authority to choose their own ministers. And of course, it was far from perfect, but this event has rightly been celebrated for centuries as a proud moment in Unitarian history. Now, that king decreed that religion was a matter of individual conscience. And for his time, the edict was an extraordinary move. But if you examine it a little bit more closely, we find that his tolerance was limited to 4 state-approved churches, and of course, one of those was Unitarian. All the others were unapproved religions and were not permitted. So limiting their tolerance shows that our spiritual ancestors had some room to grow, I think. And of course, we did evolve. Yet in the early 19th century, some free-thinking folks in our tradition were persecuted from within again. Consider transcendentalist clergy like Theodore Parker and Ralph Waldo Emerson. When Parker preached his sermon, the Transient and the Permanent in Christianity, he was shunned. Preachers wouldn't speak to him, and very few Unitarian churches in New England would allow him in their pulpits. And then, of course, after the Harvard Divinity School address by Emerson, there was outright hatred toward him, and it actually caused him to leave the Unitarian ministry. So this outrage was directed at those whose crime was to envision a more tolerant, liberal religion. And since then, UUs are much more tolerant of all religious beliefs and even accepting of most, I believe. But acceptance implies an active interest to positively engage with the other. So Of course, we all sigh in relief now that those old days are gone, right? Well, unfortunately, I believe that the issue that most clearly divides UUs currently is intolerance. Clergy or congregations who do not conform to the perspectives currently in fashion or in favor are often barely tolerated, much less accepted or engaged with. Ministers and congregations are threatened with career-ending and financial penalties. Now, this clearly violates congregational polity, one of the core commonalities that has unified Unitarians throughout history. It also stands directly against the 1999 UUA Statement of Conscience on Religious Tolerance that celebrated the internal religious diversity that we had rather than seeking a single monolithic identity. It included a promise to move beyond tolerance and accept the beliefs of others in such a way that does not violate individual human rights and dignity. So what happened? Well, as they say in that Monty Python sketch, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Many of us never expected investigations within our denomination would not only violate the rights and dignity of our clergy, but also put other ministers and even congregations in fear. In one case, a UU interim minister was falsely accused of racism by a single individual in a congregation that she had left months before. And a year-long inquiry began. I was assigned as a good officer. And for those of you that don't know what that is, that's a clergy person who's assigned to the person who's accused to advocate for them and join with them during that journey. Just by providing support to an accused person, the accuser suggested that I too should be investigated for racism. Well, I escaped a formal charge, thankfully, but I did have to watch as a friend and colleague who had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer had her long career destroyed and her mind, body, and soul shattered. When she passed away 2 months ago, and I sat next to her as she did, she was broken-hearted that the issue was never resolved because she had been too ill to see it through. Now, unfortunately, situations like this are not all that unusual, and I'm sure some of you are probably aware of some. Obviously, some clergy have violated our ethics or even the law, and that obviously is intolerable. But the burden of proof shouldn't be on the accused to prove their innocence. And having opinions differing from denominational leadership does not warrant disciplinary actions. We all know that embracing differences is a hallmark of our liberal faith. Limiting acceptable opinions and decreasing congregational autonomy only further divides us. It almost feels like we have another imperfect edict of Torta. We are tolerant and accepting if, fill in the blank. Tolerance and especially acceptance should not have qualifiers. Diversity within our denomination, within our congregations, and within the ranks of clergy is what makes us who we are. It is diversity that is united by the power of true tolerance for the full breadth of progressive thought. I believe acceptance of all must be achieved before we can accomplish the wider UU goals of democracy, peace, and justice in the wider world. Our saving grace and power is in the individual congregation. I think now is the time to walk the talk. Congregations have decision-making abilities, but share a liberal religious theology with other congregations. Theology is the force that unites us, but congregations themselves choose ministers, vote on denominational affairs, and give their money to those who feel represent them. That is the power that unifies, and it is not a power that anyone should be afraid of. Instead, I hope that we can honor the diversity and proud heritage of congregational polity that first brought all of us together and that can still unify us. The essence of UUism is a celebration of diversity, but to do so means to look far beyond tolerance and embrace full acceptance. I think UUs can work together cooperatively to make this a better world. And in fact, I think we must. So to close, I'll borrow the thoughts of the poet and fiction novelist George Eliot, who was really Mary Ann Evans, known to often name the harsh realities of the world in front of us. And she wrote, "The responsibility of tolerance lies with those who have the wider vision." And friends, for as far as I can see, the wider vision lies with those of us who are right here. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that inspirational discourse, and lots to think about. And I hope folks are making their questions, writing their questions down for our discussion session. Is Reverend Jerry going to tell us his thoughts?
Here he is.
Okay,
I'll move on.
wonderful. What a combination.
I'm used to following Lynn's show, so
Yeah, I have the same problem.
No competition.
I'd like to thank you for this chance to speak today and think with all of you on this very important topic of unity and diversity. And to say that it's a big topic just doesn't do it justice. For myself, the words unity and diversity remind me of the Big Bang, images of the Big Bang, and it doesn't get much bigger than that, of course. I often remind the UUs in Flint, Michigan, that we don't spend enough time thinking about the UNA, the UNI in Unitarian Universalism. That's two unis in a row that emerged over many centuries of struggle. So that prefix about oneness must mean something very important. But I know some think that because the issues those words first addressed, denying the doctrine of the Trinity and the doctrine of an eternal hell, because those are no longer hot topics, some think that our very name carries very little meaning. But I'm of the mind that we need the UNI in Unitarian more than ever. I would even suggest that we can't heal our own faith, let alone help heal our nation, if we don't prove we can celebrate unity and diversity at the same time. But now, that's not in fashion. To celebrate unity by saying something like, we can understand another culture, we can understand another people's woes, that's just seen as a sappy 60s sentiment, a romantic, outdated, just plain dumb thing to say. We are often told you got to be postmodernly pessimistic about unity, or you're not in fashion. And so it goes with theories, hatched and nurtured by theorists, some of whom long held that God was objectively three in one and owned by a Christian denomination, and that hell was an objective, eternal reality reserved especially for non-Christians, of course. But now the people of the world, many of them, are rejecting many of these world-changing, once thought to be sacred theories. but it's unclear right now what will replace them. The world and our troubled, divided nation seems in need of a new idea to hold sacred. Perhaps it could be an idea attached in some way to the UNI, the UNA prefix. Now, I want to be honest with you about where I do a lot of my research on diversity and unity. TikTok. TikTok, yes. If it doesn't kill you, it will make your blood pressure go higher. On an average stroll through TikTok, you will find people protecting their particular culture with a ferocity that is just plain frightening at times. Arguments over which culture down through history enslaved the most people. Arguments that braiding your hair in a certain way is stealing someone else's culture. Lots of arguments from people who seem to get their sense of self-worth entirely from their own group. We all do that sometimes. But after a grueling session of TikTok research, when I should be doing some work, I start asking myself, at what point does a healthy celebration of diversity become ignoring or even hating unity? Is the ferocious, often blind defense of one's own culture part of human nature? Or is it also riding on some theory that says reveling in our largest possible identity, like earthling, is an embarrassment? But like many of you, I sat through many a UU service in which we glory in the now proven fact that we are all made of the same star stuff. Call it the Carl Sagan approach. And it always moves us, as well it should. Or maybe there was a service where we learned that the astronauts who viewed the Earth from space felt a profound, lasting sense of unity that made them powerful advocates for peace. But we're stuck here on Earth. So we have to give a sense of unity, of oneness in some other way. I think that's been the Unitarian job description for a long time, and our history makes us uniquely suited for it. But irony of ironies, many churches carrying the precious UNI prefix instead foster disunity by clinging to an old theory that started around 1848. This theory holds that to solve the world's problems, you just find an oppressor class to blame while totally ignoring the hearts and minds of the individuals in that class. It was and still is another materialistic doctrine, very much like the doctrine of original sin. The theory is you inherit greed from your guilty ancestors, and no matter how good you are personally, you're still bound for hell. And we thought we got rid of the doctrine of original sin. It's a theory, now made into a doctrine by many progressive people even, and you probably guessed it's called Marxist materialism or even neo-Marxism. It's characterized by hatred, not love, and it's a great way to ignore any unity between people and break them into diverse, even warring factions. Fact that Reverend Martin Luther King fled from Marxism and its inherently violent nature should tell us a lot about it. It was used most recently to justify the assassination of Charlie Kirk as just a way of doing business. A professor at our University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, very near Flint, said that such violence may not be an answer, but it could be a solution. It was never clear what the difference is between not being the answer, but it could be a solution meant. it was clear that his language was that of neo-Marxism. Among those who wield the theory most adroitly are indeed well-educated, especially college professors. But slowly, thankfully, important research is proving that this favorite theory of many academics and others doesn't cure racism. It causes it. I'm referring to a 2024 study supervised by Rutgers University that showed the book White Fragility causes people to see racism where it does not exist. It actually increases racism. Could it be that the violence and hatred of our time will create enough terrible wounds that people will naturally seek a unifying philosophy, a philosophy that finds a way to honor both our common humanity and our amazing diversity? I think it's possible. And you can see that yearning in the sometimes terrible crystal ball known as TikTok. In the midst of the culture wars fought on TikTok, mixed in with those who recite outworn theories, still accepted as sacred fact, are other people who say they've had enough of the division. It's obvious most of them are not highly educated, and therefore, for example, were never taught in college that it is a sin for a North American to wear a sombrero. This was in a TikTok post where a college student wore traditional Mexican attire on the UCLA campus, and students roundly condemned him. Then he wore the same clothes to an historic Mexican American district and asked the people of Mexico what they thought. Their responses were overwhelmingly positive. They said they liked the outfit and appreciated the celebration of their culture. Free thinking, uncoached TikTokers, believe it or not, just come out and say it. They are tired of the divisive, never-ending accusations of racism and cultural appropriation and want to find the middle ground. Their posts receive overwhelmingly positive replies. And of course, when I read them, my blood pressure returns to normal. I can feel it. These people who are tired of the hate probably don't know it, but I think they're seeking what Carl Gustav Jung called holding the tension between opposites. It is that place in our heads where we don't prematurely choose one side of the argument over the other. For example, we don't need to choose love over reason. You hold them together. To do otherwise guarantees there will be no growth of the individual or even peace in the world. Likewise, diversity needs to be held in tension with its opposite, conformity. The opposite of diversity is actually closer to conformity, monoculture, homogeneity. Unity sits in the middle where diversity and its opposite, uniformity, meet. Unity, with its you and I, for all to see, is where Unitarians can do the hard work of helping people treasure both. As many of you have noticed, it takes a great deal of courage to stand in that middle place. Updated research estimates that 15,000 churches will close in the next year, many more than originally projected. Some of those 15,000 will certainly be Unitarian Universalist churches. It is possible, even easy to argue, that churches will close because many religions have specialized in creating divisions and not in building unity. And people are just plain tired of it. Obviously, the race is on to be a faith that is truly unifying. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. I'm sure they are, and I see the claps and the hearts and so on coming up. Very interesting thoughts. Thank you very much for the both of you for these comments. And I guess I'm going to call on someone and ask if George Williams is willing to go, and we'll leave Todd with the last but not least in terms of contributions. George, can you share your wisdom from your perspective as president of the International Association of Religious Freedom and and a good friend of NAUA, and certainly a significant contributor to our success, certainly on the international scene and also in our educational program. So George.
Oh, Stephen, you bushwhacked me. I was looking so forward to hearing Todd next. Um, uh, I've had 4 hours of diversity today. I've been on the on Zoom with India and our 70 different branches there. We only count 35 as members, but we have 75 different individual groups. The diversity is so great that you travel 150 miles and they can't even understand another dialect. So I put behind me an image that is 1.5 miles away from the home that we have. Well, it's a little apartment. We moved there after retirement to be part of the indigenous community, 40,000 indigenous Hawaiians who are among the poorest of Americans. And this heiau, this temple, is actually a place of diversity and persecution. It was the last human sacrifice of King Kamehameha. It has been restored, but it is built on top of a healing temple of Kanenuakea, a member of the International Association for Religious Freedom. And so I thought that that was a fitting symbol. And as I listen, I'm so out of tune with everything as usual. I will tell the story about diversity and unity, one that travels from, and I'll use a metaphor of two-dimensional religion, and I'll use dimensionality, although it's a faulty metaphor, because I'll go to three-dimensional and then multi-dimensional that we try to do in the International Association for Religious Freedom. We are so happy to have as our newest member the National Unitarian Association, North American Association. Although you're spread out past North America now to become international. We are so proud to have you. We're looking forward to joining our different opportunities, our classes, our different ways of approaching this problem of learning and acting together in a compassionate way. I prepared something, but when I read it, it took as long as John's to read. So I'm going to shift and try to do something that maybe I can do. I'll try and share it. My mouse doesn't want to work yet. Try to wake it up. Okay. See if I can share my screen. Are you seeing it?
Yes.
Let me mention that we are in the 125th year as we welcome you as our newest member. We have a challenge of unity and diversity, and this topic is certainly very consequential, especially in a world that is as polarized as it has ever been with either or thinking. And so, as we try to look at deeper perspectives, let me start with my own pilgrimage. As a child, I was born into a Southern Baptist family. My father returned from World War II, having been a chaplain in British India, but it was only Pakistan that he got to, at Karachi and the Air Force Base there. He returned with a mission to work to change the South to become compassionate, and we would soon be rewarded for good works, and we would have to leave the South. But before we left, as a 5-year-old, I was a little precocious. I accepted the either or, saved, lost, good, evil plan of salvation. And I walked forward in a revival service as a 5-year-old to accept Jesus as the solution of the dichotomy, the binary world of two opposing forces. And that caused a very big crisis because Baptists do not believe in infant baptism. And a 5-year-old certainly is not an adult and could not pass for adult baptism. And so there was a council, 3 ministers, the board of deacons in front of the entire congregation. And I was able to pass that and be baptized. That lasted very, very beautifully. I was able to live in that faith tradition of 2 dimensions for 5 years. But in 1949, my father took a stand that brought the Ku Klux Klan to the front lawn. They burned a cross. They threatened him. They threatened our family. And we ended up as missionaries to Utah. And so in Provo, Utah, I was to learn something about the uncertainty of not being in the majority faith, but to be in the minority. Every day of my life for 8 years in Utah, I was under the attempts to bring me into another faith. And so I learned the Book of Mormon better than my friends. I learned to debate religiously, and I began to read the Bible in defense as critically as I read the Book of Mormon. And that got me into trouble. It was in Leviticus that I found the God there not equal to the God in the New Testament. And I asked my father about that. How could this God of anger that could ask for the death of men, women, and children be the same as the God in the New Testament, who happened to be the Son of God? Well, anyway, you can see where that reason was going. My father told me that until I learned Greek and Hebrew, I could not really question the Bible. And so I quickly set that as a goal. And in seminary, I completed the 5th year of, I had 3 years of Greek in college and 2 in seminary, 2 years of Hebrew, a year of Aramaic. in Southern Baptist Seminary, like you, Todd, and a year in the International Baptist Seminary in Rochelacan, Switzerland. There, I got to study under some very liberal New Testament and Old Testament scholars. It was in that state that I got a taste of liberal religion. In fact, the faculty at Southern Baptist Seminary said that within one semester I went to fundamentalist to liberal because well, every class I did something wrong. In biblical archaeology, I measured the amount of rain that it would take, how many feet an hour to cover Mount Ararat in 40 days. I could go down the list of how a questioning faith can get one into immediate liberal trouble. And so my faith was already three-dimensional. And I, of course, like everyone, studied a little bit of Hegel, and you have the thesis, and then the opposite. For me, it was Mormonism at first, but then I began to realize that there was something true in the very opposition that I was being opposed by. There was something in Mormonism that I didn't have, and that was a level, a community of identity, of loyalty. All of these conservative dimensions had some portion of truth there. And so it is Pierce that was telling us that the solution to the dialectic or the triangle of Hegel was not adequate, that there is something that is left over in the attempt to bring that contradiction into a unity. As I got into religious studies, I noticed that there was wonderful attempts in each of the traditions, and I'll quickly just mention a couple. In China, the yin-yang theory seems to be two-dimensional, but it isn't. It is a system that is based on motion. Too much yin yields yang. Too much yang yields yin. Now, in that circularity, there seems to be a unification, a unity, and that neither can be erased, that there is truth in both. Taoist mystics took that in a different direction. They tried to come up with unity as a monism. That is, besides the two extremes, there is the unity of the one, but you cannot begin to eliminate those and have the Tao. And so other Taoists, knowing mathematics, said that there is something beyond the one. That would be the zero. And so the equivalent of the zero would actually be the Tao. I won't go into that any further, but it begins to show you that in every one of our religious traditions in Asia, there is the problem of unity and diversity. So when we actually begin to go beyond two and three-dimensional thinking, there is the many perspectives or the many different ways of looking at things. The sevenfold logic of Jain religion is one that honors the partial truths of every different position without absolutism. And it is called the Septabanga Jnana, which is an affirmation, the negation, both the affirmation and the negation, and then the comment that it's indescribable. But it's not only indescribable, it may not be, or it may be, or it still may be indescribable. And so these 7 different perspectives each have some partial element of truth. Now, how does that come back to our discussion, especially at this moment in Unitarian history? And I have to say that one of the saving moments for me uh, after leaving graduate school and teaching at California State University was to be invited to the little Unitarian fellowship there to do a series on Taoism. And it was there that I began to discover the wonder of Unitarianism. And then now I'm married to a Transylvanian Unitarian, and you may know her, Dr. Judith Galliard, who was the instigator of the partner church movement. And it was a movement of 5 years before it was begun to be institutionalized and taken over by the institution and turned into something that was not partner to partner and a free religious movement anymore. And that history took a very different turn. So I am deeply involved in Unitarianism, and yet it is only one of my identities because Imaoka Sensei, my other spiritual teacher among the other teachers that I had, my father being one, a Southern Baptist, Imaoka, a Unitarian who transcended Unitarianism, a bit like Emerson, one of his heroes, taught us that when we look back, each of the steps that we take religiously and spiritually is part of our foundation, part of our history. And so I can also have an identity as a indigenous Hawaiian, accepted there as a kapuna, a teacher of that tradition. And so in a couple of weeks, I'll actually be able to tell you, because I'm sworn to secrecy by the lawyers right now, that we will have an international incident, an international case about this heiau and about what has been religious persecution by I must stop at that point because the lawyer said I better not say one word more about this until this case actually breaks. I hope that you will be able to join us in taking a stand for religious freedom in the United States against indigenous people. And so, with a little bit of going with the winds, blowing every direction, and not actually staying with my words that would have taken 18 minutes to read, and I thought I was writing a 10-minute talk. I hope you have just a taste of some of the richness of our new relationships with IARF and NAUA, that we can work together, that we can grow together, and that we can find a path that will make us more compassionate and more unified people.
George, thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. There is so much in really all the presentations so far. And now I sort of understand why the attempt to engage one's theological diversity took the Commission on Appraisal 5 years to do. Actually, there's so much here, and and the 2 hours that we set aside is not enough. So thank you, George, and let's give Reverend Todd the last slot, and then we'll go into hopefully about a half hour of question and answer. So Todd, please go ahead.
Great, thank you. Well, that was all wonderful. First of all, I have to say what an obviously kind and gentle and an intelligent soul that George Williams is. I just so appreciate his presence and the way that he speaks with people, his enthusiasm, everything good about people I see in George when he speaks. George, thank you so much for who you are, in addition to the brilliance that you bring, the inspiration you bring. It's also such an honor, really, to really this be my first real interaction with Reverend Lynn and Jerry Kerr. I thank you both so much for your wisdom as well, and it's really great to be with you in this platform. So thank you so much. And of course, John, what a way to start us off, man, with such a personal journey of your own. Really, I think highlighting the importance of this liberal religion that we're all part of, and to have experienced what it's like when it's absent from one's life. So thank you all so much for that. I tell you, it's really, you're all such a difficult act to follow. I'm not 100% sure what direction to take, but as I started thinking about it, you know, the idea of unity and diversity, as my mind works, I started to question if that's really the right goal to begin with. And I don't think it is. I don't think that that we should set out to seek unity and diversity. I think that those are a byproduct, a natural byproduct that don't have to be achieved, but will come naturally for the very reasons that everyone on this panel discussed, and that is tolerance. If tolerance is the goal, then diversity naturally arises, right? It is just natural that we can tolerate our differences, therefore we're different. And I would also say that I'm not sure that unity is the goal, because it does sort of indicate we're talking about being a homogeneous organization where everybody's together on the same page. So I'm not sure that those are really where I would focus my energy. That feels so UUA to me, truthfully. I think as I wrestled with it, I thought, maybe I would phrase the goal should be thriving together through tolerance, right? Thriving together through tolerance. And tolerance, requires a fundamental commitment to freedom, right? To the freedom of people we're with to be different and to think differently than us. And that's how we thrive, because tolerance then naturally leads to or begets innovation, right? When you allow different ideas, new ideas emerge and we become innovative. That's why, the 19th century following the Enlightenment period was to this day the most progressive period, socially, technologically, scientifically, than any other period in human history. When people had that period of to think for themselves and not be afraid they were going to be persecuted, think outside the box. So I think that if you realize that in order to thrive together, we need to tolerate our differences, we naturally end up with a community that is unified, at least in our ability to be together, and diverse. So tolerance, I think, really becomes easy, as I think Reverend Lynn pointed out. It's not perfect, and I get this question a lot. Well, shouldn't we transcend tolerance? Shouldn't we do more than tolerance? Ideally, yes. And by the way, tolerance used to be the same as, is calling for anarchy. Right? And there were laws against it. You could be arrested for advocating tolerance, because how could any society not be ripped apart if we didn't all think the same, right? That was the belief. And when, after the 100 Years religious wars, following the Reformation, people were so tired of the bloodshed and brutality, they said, well, maybe we should give this tolerance thing a try. But even then, it was like, well, we'll tolerate you living with us. We're not going to kill you. It was basically live and not kill. Right. So you can live with us, but you're not going to have the same rights, and you can't live in the same neighborhoods and all that. And that was true if you were a Catholic dominant, the way you treated Protestants, or if you were dominated by Protestants, it's the way you treated the Catholics. Tolerance was not a high bar by any means. It has evolved over the years to where it is today, where we tend to have the connotation that tolerance means letting people I disagree with live next door to me, or to move about freely in my society and have the same rights as me, and hopefully the same protections under the law and same access to the benefits of society. But tolerant, the idea that, well, shouldn't we actually embrace one another's ideas? Can we get to the point where we can embrace our differences? I don't think that's reasonable. I mean, we can get to that point sometimes, but we have to live together first, right? I grew up in the era of desegregation. We grew up in a very poor neighborhood, so I was among lots of kids from different ethnic backgrounds, racial backgrounds. And, this was 1969 when I moved into this neighborhood. And we were taught by our parents, the previous generation, to hate each other, to dislike each other. We couldn't be friends. And yet we lived across the street from one another. We went to school together. And we slowly became friends. At first, we pretended we didn't like each other, but we hung out and just didn't talk to each other. Maybe we played flag football or street football together. And then, by the time we became teenagers, like all kids, we said, Jesus, let's not listen to our parents. And we just became the best of friends. And that's what happens with tolerance, right? Tolerance can lead to a better society, because not only does it put us together, it says you have to live together without killing each other. You have to live together peacefully, according to the law. And in living together, then we can learn to love each other. We don't necessarily love everybody, but we can. So the other thing I would say about tolerance is that it does open us up to loving others, and it is in fact a type of love in and of itself, not a sentiment, but loving someone is very different than liking them. You can love everybody and not like most of them. Right. So, and saying I don't like somebody is basically saying I dislike somebody, or I am dislike them. I'm dislike them in how they go about doing things. I'm dislike them in how they think. I'm dislike them in how they live. But loving them simply means I'm there for them. I am going to make sure that they have the same rights that I do, no matter what our differences are, right? So as the sentiment that's attributed to Voltaire, I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to death your right to say it. That is a very powerful conviction. And that is the conviction, as we heard, I think, last night, for those who heard Reverend Elad Zabo, our keynote speaker, that is the conviction that Unitarianism is rooted in, really tolerance, primarily human dignity, right? Because that's where the Renaissance and the Enlightenment grew out of human dignity, the belief that humans in human agency, in human reason, in human goodness, and human possibility. But you can't promote that if you don't have a society that upholds it. And tolerance is the first rule. Tolerance is the first rule that promotes that kind of human dignity. And so, Elon said, this is really, our religion is born and growing in tolerance. And I think he's right. It has such a beautiful sentiment, and it continues to do that. He quoted Sebastian Castellio, and I have it here, saying, "We can live together peacefully only when we control our intolerance. Even though there will always be differences of opinion from time to time, we can at any rate come to general understandings, can love one another, and can enter the bonds of peace, pending the day when we shall attain unity of faith." So this is really a beautiful way of putting it. The other thing I would say, intelligent people, I hope, understand that ideas are like parasites, right? There's something about ideas that they not consciously, but like genes, they want to thrive, they want to reproduce, and they want to dominate. In this sense, they are parasitic. And we believe they are our ideas, but in fact, we belong to our ideas. And ideas often force us to try to go about a world afraid of any new ideas and to attack any other ideas as if they're a virus, if you will, a virus of the mind that must be destroyed so that they're no threat to us. And when that happens, when we're in that anger, that intolerance, that unwillingness to listen, that readiness to demonize and to destroy and disassociate and silence and disfellowship, whatever it is, that's really indications that we're under the spell of a parasitic idea that wants to become dominant in the meme pool, if you will, as Richard Dawkins would put it. So we maybe think we're being loyal and faithful to the right or righteous idea, when in fact we're being controlled by a parasite that prevents us from moving forward as individuals, because we're not being authentic to ourselves, and as a society, because we're unable to innovate. We're unable to let that diversity make us stronger, just as a diversity of genes make us healthier individuals, that hybridization, if you will. John Dietrich, who's one of my famous predecessors here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, also called the father of religious humanism, was incredibly inspiring, especially given that he was writing his sermons, back at the turn of the 20th century. He did a sermon that I sort of did a redux of just a couple months ago, but his was actually given 100 years this month, and it's called "Who Are These Unitarians? What are we about?" And this is what he said: "Unlike any other movement in religion with which I am acquainted, our movement is based not on the principle of ecclesiastical authority as in the Catholic Church, nor on the principle of doctrinal uniformity as in the Protestant Church, but on this principle of liberty, of worship, and of thought, the freedom of worship and thought. In all the history of Unitarianism, no person has ever been denied admission because of any belief or lack of belief. Neither has anyone ever been asked to prescribe to any theological or philosophical formula, at least not until recently. Unitarianism simply asserts that anyone, white or black, rich or poor, ignorant or educated, Jew or Gentile, bond or free, Christian or pagan, Orthodox or heterodox, theist or atheist, right? A century ago, saying atheists should be able to come to church, is entitled to think as he sees fit and yet not be denied the right of religious fellowship. And I would say, on the grander scheme, if we do our job right, the right of social fellowship. And that's why tolerance, to me, it isn't perfect, but it is enough. It is enough, because we can't force people to be like each other. We can't force people to embrace one another, but we can say we are going to be a society in which no matter how different you are, your neighborhoods are open, your schools are open, your stores are open, your businesses are open, and you're treated fairly and justly and equally under the law. So to me, this really gets at the heart of what liberal religion is about. Fundamentally, the dignity of every person and all people, but it really starts with this ability to cure ourselves of these mind viruses that want to make us the worst possible beings we can be by just recognizing we can, we've got common challenges. When we stop focusing on our uncommon ideas and start focusing on our common challenges, no matter what we think, we're going to be able to solve those problems. And that ultimately is what Unitarianism is. It is what we hope will be a microcosm of what might become someday society itself. So I will leave it there for now and ready to move on to the next phase of this this meeting.
Todd, thank you very, very, very much. And I think there are so many ideas that have been put out that there is an incredible diversity of interpretation of the way in which to approach this. And and as I said before, I can understand why it would have taken a commission 5 years to try to figure out how to deal with it. We're trying to deal with it in less than 2 hours. So let's open the floor for questions. Please raise your reaction hand. If you click the heart at the bottom of your screen, the second bar up says raise hand, and if you raise your hand, we'll be able to see it at the top, and I will call on you in order. And if you could please keep your comments or questions to about a minute or two so we can get in as many questions as possible in the allotted time. So um, we're ready for some questions. I'm looking for hands.
Lincoln had it.
Joanne, are you seeing hands?
It looks like Lincoln Baxter
Oh,
has
there's
his,
Lincoln.
he's
Okay.
already been
Yeah.
highlighted.
Go ahead, Lincoln.
Okay, so real quick question. I mean, we spent the last hour and a half talking, or almost hour and a half talking about tolerance to a large extent. And one of the challenges with talking about tolerance, it's all very nice to say we need to tolerate. Okay. One of our speakers, even, I think it was one of the Kerrs, used both the word tolerance and intolerable. And there's a dichotomy when we talk about tolerance, because clearly we do see some things as intolerable. One could argue that the UUA has been intolerable in the way it has treated people over the last 5 years. And so I'm wondering if our speakers would talk about what the limits are of tolerance.
Can I jump in on that? Because that's a great question. It's on the tail end of what I was saying there. Yeah, I mean, your whole heart, you're right, and I think it's really important to understand that as an Enlightenment religion rooted in a Renaissance religion, when we're talking about tolerance, we're almost fundamentally talking about ideas, right? And that's where that's the level on which these unnecessary wars are fought. It is on ideological differences. So fundamentally, we're talking about tolerating people's ideological differences, which may be expressed as cultural differences, as well as even some physical differences. We're not talking about behavioral differences. As you said, there are some behaviors we cannot tolerate. So we're not going to tolerate murder, right? We're not going to tolerate things that truly destroy the dignity or the livelihood or the lives of other human beings, right? What's happening in the Middle East right now, particularly with innocent Palestinians or the civilians in Ukraine, that stuff is intolerable. It should be intolerable to anybody with a conscience that we're saying these innocent people can be killed, they can be fodder. So no, there's so much we should not tolerate. What we're really
Yeah.
talking about is the ideological differences that
Yeah,
unnecessarily create those wars to begin with.
yeah. So it's the tolerance, the line becomes one of between ideas and behavior.
For me, yeah. I mean, there are some behaviors we should tolerate too if they're non-harmful and don't
If they're
destroy
not destructive,
us,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Do we have another question? Okay. Bruce. Go ahead, Bruce. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. This is to follow up on the previous question, and I just want more elaboration. How do we as a faith respond to Christian nationalists who deny the rights of our members, who are seeking to penalize our LGBTQ brothers and sisters? What is our proper response? And again, maybe Todd's message here is online with that, but I would like to hear clearly, how can we deal with these people who do not tolerate us?
Mhm. This is a question that's been going on for quite a long time, and the late Reverend Forrest Church wrote some extensive essays on precisely this issue. Would someone like to take a stab at that?
Yeah. Well, I'm reminded of all of the recent thinking and anger that went along with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and how there was sort of a sorting out, and I think in a good way, that people realize that listening to speech that falls short of calling for violence, armed violence, that is, you're listening intently, and if the person isn't saying we're coming for you and urging other people to get out their weapons, that speech somehow, hopefully, heard by the masses will serve the purposes of the good. That enough people have enough inherent worth and dignity that they will be repelled by it. So you let people speak. And I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but I'm always hopeful that when enough people hear Christian nationalists talk, and it's very violent talk, that somewhere down the road, that there'll be an end to themselves with their angry rhetoric that's irrational, not just angry, but just plain angry and repellent. I know that can take a while, but that's the way my mind always goes. I think perhaps one of the best things the folks that allow skinhead Nazis, neo-Nazis to march, if they're marching and they're not hurting anyone, that they become a testament to, or somehow bring the good. Perhaps that sounds wishy-washy optimistic, but that's what I hope for.
Mm.
And I just add too that, for me, I think it does go back, and I think, Todd, you mentioned this, we're talking about worth and dignity a lot when we talk about tolerance. And again, that's kind of, to me, that's a surface level. And then the next step is sort of acceptance. And that's when you actually engage with people. And it goes even further. But I'm reminded that the person that ran into the Mormon church just a few miles from here last Sunday, there's a GoFundMe page for his family. And it has generated a lot of money for the family to take care of his family. I have not personally seen that before, where so many people have been willing to contribute to someone. And to me, that's a level that I'm happy to see, that people care about his family as well as all the other people who were affected by the tragedy. Again, not condoning the behavior, right? So.
Mm. I'd like to add something to the discussion, and that is there is a wonderful sermon and video by James Tallarico, who is a minister as well as a state senator in Texas. And it is a takedown of religious nationalism based on the Bible. And it is an absolutely incredible destruction of Christian nationalism with biblical quotes and references and so on. It is eloquent, and if anybody wants to see it and can't find it, it's James Tallarico. Um, it is something that I think may give you material to refute the validity of Christian nationalism. So I'd be happy to provide that to anyone. Just reach out to me.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that we can, when we're confronted with bad ideas, we should be able to debate those ideas. Right? If we're confronted with destructive behavior, hopefully illegal behavior, the worst behaviors, we have laws against those already.
Mhm.
We don't have to fix those. We report those behaviors, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And Jesus had many arguments against Christian nationalism. And Reverend Talrico does a beautiful job of elucidating those. Terry, go ahead.
Okay, well, John knows about this. There's a list that a lot of us are on. It's the UU listserv. Lots and lots of UUs there. And it's currently being ripped apart because of a certain subject that is very controversial to some. And we keep having to hear about it. But it's about trans people. And so what's happening in UUism is that there is a faction, and they're right in many ways. You don't want kids under 18 having decisions made for them about changing gender. But I'm not sure what we can do about this, but it's a very big problem. People are claiming that uh, transgenderism is a danger to children, and we're arguing about this. People are leaving the list, and I imagine, I don't know if this is going on in a UA, but I feel like it's something that needs addressing because Lynn and Jerry, I was going to get a hold of you guys to ask your opinion because it's getting so inflamed, because what other people are taking it as is a rejection of trans people, when in actuality, I think it's a rejection of some things like men that turn into women playing sports against women and that being unfair. So if any of you are familiar with this topic, I would really appreciate it if you would weigh in, because I think this could possibly take us down. That's how bad it's gotten. We started a new list, and so some people still belong to both lists, and some people have left the old lists.
Do either of the Kerrs want to comment on that, or does John?
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, John. You're still muted. No, you muted, John.
It's
We
a
all believe-
delicate
Okay.
subject, and I've watched this magnificent list that has been going for almost 2.5 years. That's taught me so much, fragmenting with factions developing, and everybody with PhDs at each other's throats. And I've never seen anything quite like it. It poses a problem at several levels, and I don't know how many levels we can deal with. And this, I don't think that we can deal with it here. But it's certainly given the intensity of the dispute and the problem of the group dynamics on that list, and the quality of the people that are magnificent. The people have enormous qualities. Something's wrong, and something's something's not right. and NAUA may be able to canalize, to do something with that kind of energy that's disruptive to our communities, by having possibly a debate later in the year when things calm down a little bit. Try to canalize, try to bring that energy into some kind of focus and acceptance of different views, so that we can live with each other. But on the list, those on the list right now, that list is so divided. The discussion is so intense that wonderful people are not wanting to live with each other on that list, and the list is fragmenting into 2 or 3 lists. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy because there was a lot of great thinking on that list, and a lot of fantastic people. And the subject is just, it's, I don't have a word for the subject, but there is something else that behind that subject that remains a sort of a taboo in our communities in Europe, and possibly in our communities in the United States. And behind that subject is for me, it's personal, but for me, it's a taboo and needs to be dealt with as well. It's the growing problem of sexual orientation in our different communities, where a larger percentage than we've ever had of our communities are homosexual. And that creates a sort of a group dynamic that's very different from the kind of group dynamics that I had, for example, 15 or 20 years ago. I don't know
John,
at all how to handle that.
John, I think we want to keep, I just want to make a comment. This is a problem of a listserv. This is not an NAUA problem. This is a problem of another group. The NAUA, through our academy, has had programs with the Braver Angels, which provides mechanisms to have discussions concerning things in which there are significant and methodologies and leaders and so on. So the listserv can somehow take examples and go to Braver Angels to solve their problems. But that is not an NAUA problem. And please don't give us other people's problems. We have enough of our own. So if there's...
Well, it's going to turn into a problem for NAUA. I mean, you're made up of UUs.
Stephen, can I just address it just a little bit? I don't want to get any more bogged down in this one than this, but it, it has been a bit of a problem at NAUA. There's been groups that have argued, and it's actually created hard feelings. And some of the same behaviors we see with the UUA, right? If you have an opinion on this particular issue that somebody else disagrees with, they immediately attack not only the individual, but the whole organization. NAUA is transphobic, or whatever the case may be. I would just suggest, we be somewhat stoic about it. In the sense that we can only do what we can do, right? We are a religion based intolerance. And if for some reason this one issue creates for some people the need to attack the character and the motives of others, to do some mind reading and emotion reading, that's a problem. But we've got to talk about it, right? If we can't talk about this issue or any other as an organization without tearing ourselves apart, then we are not the organization we say we are. So if this destroys us, it destroys us. This or any other issue destroys us, it destroys us. We have to be able to talk with one another, and hopefully most of us understand that. We can't shut down the conversations, and at the same time, we shouldn't be attacking each other's character because we're not saying what we want to say. I'm accused of being transphobic just for talking about a controversy that was in the UUA over an article on this issue. I didn't say anything one way or the other as far as my opinions go. But this is really a very difficult issue. It has crept into NAUA at times. And I mean, I think, I'm not going to shut down the conversation. We need to do our best to be Unitarian Universalist at this time, in this subject, just like any other. And if we can't, then we fail. And if we fail, then we fail.
Mm.
So
Todd,
onward, hopefully someone else will pick up the pieces.
Thanks,
Todd,
Todd.
what I was trying to point out is that we have just had a program with Braver Angels. It was an excellent program in September. And so if this becomes an NAUA issue again, I think we will seek the assistance of Braver Angels because that's their business and they have the training and technology to deal with, and we will deal with that. If it's a problem on the listserv, I think that's their problem to deal with, and they have to resolve it because they're not our population. But we'll deal with the people who are associated with us and this issue as necessary, and they can do the same with theirs. That's all the point that I was trying to make. Is there another question? I think we have time for maybe one more question or so. Jack, go ahead. Unmute. You need to unmute, Jack.
When you called on me, I was moved into the speakers section, and so I didn't see where to click. After Charles Darwin published his theories, people who were persuaded by them came to be called Darwinists. Well, I'm a Dawkinsist. And I have a two-part question that I think is more disruptive than we transgenders. And that is not God obsolete? And if so, what is the responsibility of Unitarianism going forward? That's for anybody who wants to.
Well, that sounds like the subject of another program. But if someone would like a quick response
I've got a
or
question.
comment,
I've got a question pertinent to our discussion.
yeah, go ahead.
It's Bob Sloy.
Go
John,
ahead.
I enjoyed hearing what you had to say. I was a member of the UU Partner Church Council for a number of years after a visit to Transylvania in 2004, and I just learned from you in your chat that the organization you were part of, the International Congregation of UUs, that was dissolved at the same time. I participated in discussion with the UU Partner Church Council because I was a longtime contributor. I was the sole vote against disbanding and returning the funds to the UUA because they thought they could do something better. Well, what have they done on the international scene? What has the UUA done? I'd be interested to hear what they've done in that time.
Do you want me to,
Good, John, go
Stefan, do
ahead.
you want me to do that?
Yes, go ahead.
The ICUU, the official situation is that the ICUU and the Partner Church Council, if I've got my dates right, were dissolved by vote from the members in 2021. And in 2021, two countries voted against that. Germany and, well, not countries, Europe and Germany voted against that, but that was not enough to prevent the dissolution. In the final reports leading to the dissolution of the Partner Church Council and the ICUU, the final report proposed the merger or the fusion of the two in a much stronger international organization. That was a promise that was made when they had to vote on the dissolution. Since then, nothing happened for 2 years. And the global network was sponsored by the UUA and many of the national associations around the world. And so that the global network has come into existence, and it's developing over the next 4 or 5 years. And the relationships of the different countries, the different Unitarian and Universalist associations around the world is also developing. It's in a development stage. And there is no set situation right now.
Yeah. I
Okay,
would,
so 4 years, basically nothing's being done.
yeah.
Basically.
Not entirely.
Yes, and I would just add to John's comments that despite efforts to establish some relationship with the UU global network, we have been kept at arm's length. So there is significant UUA pressure there to keep us out of that organization. Another challenge, but we shall overcome, as Martin Luther King has said, and we have sung. So at this point, I'd just like to thank all of our panelists for their wisdom and inspiration and thoughts. And I'd like to thank all of our participants for their questions and for listening. And I don't think this is the end of this discussion. So please stay tuned and we'll take this further. I don't think we're going to drop this topic. Thank you all so much. And our business meeting is we have a break of an hour and then we go into our business meeting. So please attend. Thanks so much to all of you.